the man who built AI's empire and almost lost it all. On a Friday afternoon in November 2023, a push notification cleaves the tech world. OpenAI's board has removed its CEO. Phones light up, calendars vanish. In offices from Soma to Redmond, private threads turn into emergency calls. Sam Altman is out. Within hours, staff channels flare. Microsoft signals it will hire Altman and anyone who wants to follow. The consumer AI wave that felt inevitable since ChatGPT suddenly looks breakable because the person most associated with steering it has been cut loose. He reads the statement like everyone else on a screen that won't blink. He's 38. He has spent years threading two languages, warning and wonder. 5 days later, he returns. The board is remade. The explanation, a breakdown in trust, lands without poetry and with consequences. The questions that won't let go: what happened here, and how did a kid from St. Louis become the figure whose absence could put the future on pause? St. Louis, Missouri. Brick houses under heavy summer air. In one of them, a boy unscrews a Macintosh and discovers that taking things apart can feel like a form of love. At 8, he teaches himself to make a computer obey. Code becomes a private language that insists on precision and rewards persistence. Years later, a high school assembly planned for National Coming Out Day detonates controversy. Parents complain, students whisper. In a gym that smells like floor polish and nerves, a teenager steps to a microphone and says he's gay. He explains why the conversation matters. The sound echoes off cinder block walls. He learns how much it costs to speak plainly and how much more it costs to be silent. He carries that lesson to Stanford in 2003. Computer science opens doors. A rented house across the bay becomes a different kind of classroom. Pizza boxes, whiteboards, friends who talk in half-formed product ideas. A boot camp for people willing to trade certainty for a shot at building something that shouldn't exist yet. Summer 2005. Y Combinator, barely more than a rumor, runs its first batch. Small checks, intense mentorship, a public demo that compresses months into minutes. Sam Altman and friends launch Looped, a mobile app that puts your friends on a map before check-in becomes a verb most people know. The future seems close enough to touch. Carriers return calls, deals get inked. Reality arrives as it always does. In receipts, no one photographs. Nights blur, sleep turns optional. Meals are whatever fits in a hand between meetings. The office hums with fluorescent light and the low thrum of servers. You can feel the caffeine in your teeth. His diet gets so bad, his body files a medieval complaint: scurvy. He laughs, then listens. You can't sprint past biology. The doctor's advice sounds almost comic for a Silicon Valley founder. Eat fruit. He tapes a list to the fridge and tries to treat his body like a co-founder. Looped earns attention, but not devotion. The timing is almost right. Product is clever. Adoption stays stubborn. He learns the line he'll repeat to founders for years: you cannot force desire. In 2012, Green Dot acquires the company for roughly $43 million. The number on paper feels safer than it feels proud. He and his co-founder, Nick Sevo, were partners in life as well as work. After the sale, the relationship ends. The breakup isn't a footnote. It's the invoice for years spent pushing the same boulder up the same hill. He leaves with two truths that will shape everything after. Make something people want, or the market will punish you. And startups extract their price in currencies that never appear on a cap table. YC invites him in as a partner. In 2014, he becomes president. The accelerator famed for consumer hits broadens its aim. He pushes for energy, biotech, and AI, work that demands patience and capital measured in years, not quarters. YC research takes shape. YC Continuity writes checks that let founders refuse early exits and build with time instead of panic. Across El Camino Real, he returns to Stanford to lead a course called How to Start a Startup. The lectures go online, free to anyone with a connection. He tells would-be founders to let effort compound. to obsess over customers, to think in decades, even when the day hurts. It's part manifesto, part survival guide, delivered in the tone of someone who has the scars to prove it. His life collects contradictions that will later look like foreshadowing. In late 2014, as Reddit weathered a leadership transition, he publicly supported the change while Ellen Pao served as interim CEO. His role was investor and advisor, not CEO. In his own closet, a different kind of preparation. Supplies for when normal breaks. Gold, gas masks, iodine. Because optimism in public doesn't erase private preparedness.
End policy. He helps launch a basic income research agenda at YC Research and Open Research, moving real dollars to households in pilots. It's a question disguised as a program. What changes when money is guaranteed? Who becomes braver? What habits melt? The experiments hint at a belief he rarely states directly. Technology can widen the circle only if the ground beneath people feels solid. December 2015. Deep learning dazzles researchers. The wider world barely notices. Altman joins Elon Musk, Greg Brockman, Ilya Sutskever, and others to found OpenAI as a non-profit lab. The promise is audacious. Move toward artificial general intelligence while keeping the benefits broad and the risks contained. By 2019, ideals collide with economics. Scaling cutting-edge models requires capital and compute at industrial scale. OpenAI creates a capped profit entity governed by the non-profit's mission, allowing investment while limiting returns. A structural bet that purpose can anchor ambition. That summer, Microsoft invests $1 billion and becomes OpenAI's exclusive cloud partner. Altman steps in as CEO. He now inherits a paradox he helped design: race forward while keeping your hand near the brake. November 30th, 2022. OpenAI releases ChatGPT. 1 million users arrive in 5 days. Within 2 months, estimates put monthly users around 100 million, the fastest consumer uptake anyone can remember. Classrooms argue, living rooms experiment, offices plug the model into everyday work and discover it can draft, summarize, explain, and hallucinate, sometimes in the same afternoon. On May 16, 2023, he sits before a Senate subcommittee and says, if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong. He urges licensing for powerful training runs, standards for safety, shared testing. He threads humility with advocacy. This is potent, and it needs guardrails. To some, he sounds like an adult in the room that too often celebrates toys. To others, a competitor warning just enough to buy time for the lead he holds. Then he takes the conversation on the road. A global tour, capitals, auditoriums, startup hubs. Applause mixes with anxious questions about jobs, bias, and truth. In Europe, he spars with the contours of the AI Act, briefly suggesting OpenAI might pull services if regulation overreaches, then pledging to comply. The spotlight asks him to be both evangelist and editor of the future. Meanwhile, the math behind the magic shows its teeth. Racks of GPUs, rising power needs, data centers that look like small cities. In the shadows of the adoption curve, he places longer bets on energy as a cap on progress and on governance as the only way to keep public trust from snapping. July 24, 2023. WorldCoin launches. The pitch is simple and strange. Look into a polished metal sphere, the orb, so an algorithm can create a unique iris code that proves you're human without revealing your name. In return, you receive a world ID and, where permitted, a crypto token. Lines form in malls and parsers. The future feels tactile, a cold surface against warm skin, a ritual that lasts seconds, a passport for digital life. The backlash arrives just as quickly. Critics see a surveillance apparatus dressed as inclusion, with consent marquia in low-income communities. Regulators act. Kenya suspends sign-ups in August 2023. Spain's Data Protection Authority temporarily halts operations in March 2024. For believers, it's necessary infrastructure for an AI era where bots can mimic anyone. For skeptics, it's techno-utopianism that forgets how power behaves. For Altman, it's proof that ideas about identity don't live on whiteboards. They meet laws and people and fear. November 17th, 2023 feels like a pulled fire alarm with no smoke. The board cites a loss of confidence and failures of candor. Greg Brockman resigns. Staff channels flood. A supermajority signs a letter pledging to leave unless leadership is restored. Room during the storm. A town hall. Faces washed in laptop glow. He thanks people without self-pity. He refuses to turn his name into a banner, even as the moment tries to make it one. The air carries a blunt question. Is the mission an institution or a relationship? Outside the building, Microsoft signals it will hire him and anyone who wants to follow, offering to create a new AI group overnight. Over the next days, the board bends, then breaks its formation. By midweek, Altman returns as CEO. Directors change. In March 2024, an external review lands. No fraud, no criminality, a breakdown in trust. New board members with reputations for steadiness join. Altman later re-enters the board. The fix isn't a slogan, it's structure. Process, oversight, clarity about who holds which levers and why they're allowed to pull them. Spring 2024.
OpenAI unveils GPT-4o with live voice that feels startlingly present. One voice, Sky, sounds, to many ears, uncannily like an actor known worldwide. Scarlett Johansson objects. The company pauses the voice and apologizes. Engineers hear signal processing and timbre. The public hears a person. It's a technical feat that turns into a civics lesson. In a world of frictionless mimicry, consent is not a courtesy, it's the boundary between innovation and theft. Another thread frays and knots in public. In March 2024, Elon Musk sues OpenAI and Altman over alleged mission drift. In June, he withdraws the suit. To spectators, it's a feud. To the field, it's a sign that early alliances don't survive diverging philosophies. Inside OpenAI, safety leadership shifts. Key figures depart in 2024 after disagreements about focus and pace. Safety work is reorganized. The message to the outside world is steady. Safety remains central, but the departures remind everyone that principles are easy to print and hard to practice under deadline. Partnerships widen even as scrutiny grows. In 2024, Apple announces plans to integrate ChatGPT capabilities into its devices, putting OpenAI's models closer to the pockets of hundreds of millions. Reach expands. Expectations multiply. The next misstep won't be theoretical, it will be on lock screens. On a different register, Altman and his husband, software engineer Oliver Mulherin, signed the Giving Pledge on May 28, 2024, promising to give away most of their wealth with an eye towards technologies that create abundance. They marry in January 2024 in a small ceremony. Two people pick a private vow over a public narrative. The life outside the headlines answers a question the headlines never stop asking. What matters when the feed is quiet? The unglamorous closet from years earlier wasn't a joke, it was a clue. He backs technologies that lower the price of progress. Fusion at Helion Energy, where he serves as chair, advanced fission at Oklo, which he once chaired. The motive isn't complicated.
Intelligence at scale inhales electricity. Scarcity turns political. Abundance turns liberating. In May 2023, Helion signs a power purchase agreement with Microsoft, targeting first electrons in 2028, a document that reads like science fiction and due diligence at once. Helion raises additional capital in 2025. Oklo goes public via a merger with Altman SPAC Alt-C on April 22, 2025. He steps down as Oklo's chair to reduce conflicts as AI and energy intertwine. Draw a circle and the pieces connect. AI demands power. Power requires capital. Capital chases believable stories. Stories must be redeemed by results. Those 5 days in November didn't just threaten a job, they exposed a fragile compact. Inside OpenAI, between the company and its partners, and with the public watching, morale proved to be a lever you pull, not a byproduct you hope for. Repair required something harder than charisma, the habit of telling awkward truths and building systems that don't depend on one person's mood. The risks ahead cut both ways. It could become the warning he repeats: scale outrunning stewardship, safety as performance instead of practice. Or he could blink too long and watch the field pass him by. In this terrain, slow down and speed up aren't strategies, they're temptations. The real work is cadence: when to accelerate, when to insist on proof, when to delay, because the world deserves to understand what you're about to ship. The possible gains are measured in trust, not press cycles. A regulatory regime that treats OpenAI as a partner held to high standards instead of a threat managed by punishment. A public that demands explanations and gets them. A workforce that believes the mission is an operating principle, not a poster. OpenAI's dual structure, mission at the top, capped profit beneath, forces a continuous conversation between purpose and product. The ouster revealed how brittle that conversation can be. The governance reset aims to make it feel less like a personality test and more like an operating system. Trust isn't sentiment, it's design. In the months after the storm, he rotates between rums that ask for different versions of the same discipline. CEO, deciding when to say no. Chair of a fusion company, betting on power the size of a star contained in a building. Donor in the making, funding technologies that widen prosperity. Husband, anchoring a life no headline can summarize. If you need a line to carry forward, take the one he gave a generation of founders and translate it gently into the present. Days can feel endless. Decades decide who we become. He filled days with building. The next decade will judge whether the empire he helped create becomes wise, useful, and open enough to deserve the influence it already wields.
A table, a phone face down, window light fading. Somewhere, a training run crawls forward, while a power plant hums. The empire of AI will expand, with him, past him, or around him. The part only he can do is show that the center of a storm can become a place to chart calmer weather.